The 1960s purpose-built police station on Westgate Road has lain empty since 2017. Hadrian Property Investments has submitted plans to turn it into a mix of flats and retail in the 4-storey main building, but demolishing the low-rise western block as well as the cells to the east. The western part, including today's car park, is intended as a drive-through Burger King fast food outlet. This lies close to properties on Linwood Terrace. The site is close to a busy arterial route with bus stops serving services to and from the city to destinations such as West Denton, Hexham and Carlisle. Customers will traverse the site, passing the frontage alongside the pedestrian crossing to emerge at the rear of Bentinck Road Doctor's Surgery. The plans show cars coming in by a corner entrance, then circulating clockwise around the Burger King premises, then rejoining the flow to cross the front of the retail and residential blocks before going out beside the phone box onto Westgate Road. But are there places to eat nearby? Let's have a look. Do we need another fast food outlet? Do we need the traffic, the noise, the litter? Some residents think not. They voiced their opinion with councillors and the local MP at a recent Stop the Woppa meeting.
So it's very good you're here. Very good you're here. Okay, I'm going to be quite strict. She says she's not going to need the time I've given her. I'm giving these speakers 15 minutes and other speakers 5 minutes. So, Chi, would you like to start? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I still get letters and emails from people from across the country asking how we were successful in stopping McDonald's in Kenton. No, it was 2014, and Steph's going to talk about that, but I just want to say what a struggle that was in many ways, and how often we thought that it wouldn't succeed. But, and how rare in some respects, unfortunately, it is for a campaign like that to succeed. But succeed it did. And what I'll say to Burger King if they're here, is I don't wear about telling people what to eat or when to eat it, but this is about communities deciding what is best for them. And when it comes to the West Road, when it comes to this area, between the litter, which is the #1 complaint that I get when I go to schools. I was in Canning Street School, a few months ago. They've got a Keep Benwell Clean campaign because of the litter which invades their environment. And until we can deal, with that level of litter, I don't think there should be any more major fast food locations in the West End. Newcastle, and particularly actually, as the local councillors know well, Elswick Benwell has some of the highest rates of obesity, some of the highest rates of health inequality in the whole country. And again, this has to be part of a community deciding if we want that to go forward in that context. Planning is your friend. Now, I know it might not seem like that, and actually the McDonald's victory that we had was against the advice of the council officials, and it is also true that this government, the Tory government, has taken away so many of the powers of the council over planning, made sort of economic development a priority rather than community solidarity, action and well-being. You know, and going through that planning process is what will prevent this from happening, and having the people to support you, having the advice, the legal advice, having fantastic counsellors. And just let me say, you are very fortunate as well in having fantastic counsellors like Anne, like Nigel. We've got Joyce there, we've got Ian, we've got Habib, we've got Iram. Have I missed out any of our fantastic counsellors? Rachel Sandra, Rebecca here as well. You've got fantastic counsellors, and they are really your means of driving this forward. Also, obviously, use the media. You know, don't be afraid to speak for your community. Nobody's voice is more important than yours. And also, just use me. And I can stand up in Parliament and I can talk about what is happening here. You know, I feel very strongly, as I hope you can tell, that it is that communities are only as strong as the people within them, and your well-being and your decisions about what affects you and your kids in the future, and having a healthy community in the West End. You know, having a healthy community is so important that, you know, I want to stand up for you in Parliament. But you need to tell me what to say, in a way. And you tell me what it is you want me to say, and whatever action I can take. You know, I'm happy to write to ministers all day long. I'm happy to speak in Parliament. I'm happy to set up inquiries with all-party parliamentary groups. You know, there are many different ways that we can make sure that a decision about Burger King in the West End is a decision that follows what you want for your community, and everyone here, I think, is here to help you do that. Thank you very much.
Association a couple of weeks ago and shared some of the experience that we had in Kenton in terms of the campaign to prevent the McDonald's being built, which I should say started in around about May 2014 and went on until June 2016, when McDonald's finally withdrew from the planning appeal, which gives you some sense of how long and how involved these situations can be. And I think that would be my starting point in terms of saying, if, you know, as a community, this is something you feel strongly about, it is something you could potentially be in the long haul for. But I've been really impressed with the group that I've met so far, and the level of organisation and professionalism. I think certainly put us to shame. When we first started off in Kenton, obviously we had no idea how far or how long it was going to go, and we had a Facebook page and some very unprofessional looking leaflets. So I've been very impressed by the level of organisation and professionalism of the group in the very short space of time that you've had to turn this around. But our first starting point was public meetings like this. So we had a Facebook page, and then a public meeting that was facilitated by Councillor David Stockdale. And we had, at our first public meeting, we had members of the planning department there to speak to us. And I kind of got involved because I work for another council. I've actually changed councils, but I still don't work for Newcastle. I've moved around. And it was very apparent to me that some people didn't really understand who had the decision making and who was making the application. So we had some members of the public getting understandably angry and agitated and believing it was the council who was planning to build the McDonald's. So I sort of got involved explaining that that wasn't the case, and trying to explain how councils worked and how decisions would be made. And because I'm quite happy to talk and quite happy to get involved in things, it kind of led from there. And we did get quite a good level of interest from the media in terms of being interviewed, but also we started doing press releases. So we gained experience as we went along. We realised we couldn't just wait for the media to come to us, so we would issue press releases on behalf of the campaign. And I think that's where some of the things that you've already done about having a very clear brand, a website and things like that will really support and help you, because you'll be able to get that information out in a very professional way. I'm going to stop talking now, but as Anne says, I'm very happy to take questions.
explain very briefly the process, where we are now and what happens in terms of delegate decision, and for those people that are not fully up to speed with it, just so everyone's clear on what happens next. Thank you.
My understanding of the process is that for the type of development that you're talking about, the size and the impact and things like that would normally be something called a delegated officer decision. So within the council has powers, and they can delegate those powers to certain officers to make certain decisions. And that was the same with the planned application for McDonald's. It should have been, because of the size and nature of it, it should have been decided by the planning officer. But what we did as a community was obviously object strongly, as is the case here. And as a result of the level of objection, and I think in particular, the formal number of consultations was relatively small for the McDonald's application. So I live on Central Grange, the estate. People still call it the new estate. It was built in 2005, so it's not that new, but it's still the new estate. So I live there, and actually it was only the people whose perimeter absolutely bordered the actual site who were formally consulted. So because it was a relatively small number of consultees, which from the council's perspective actually exceeded the legal number they had to do, so they'd gone above and beyond, but it was still a relatively small number, and then the objections had been 3 and 4 and 5-fold in terms of the number of people who objected. And with support of elected members as well, I would say that the decision was made that it would be upgraded, if you like, from a delegated officer decision to a planning committee decision.
I was just going to ask, you said that you managed to get some questions raised in Parliament, is that right? And
yes.
What stage was that?
Whenever there was if there was a questions around local government, so regularly in Parliament are debates around local government, around the environment, and around health and well-being, and I would raise this as an example of community action or of going against health and well-being or litter. I mean, I constantly now actually raise litter and in Parliament. So if you have a campaign name, which you do, there's two things actually. I can raise questions in Parliament about how it's happening, but I would also say that what I did, which I can do, is to take a petition to Parliament. So as an MP, I have the right to petition Parliament to take action on behalf of my constituents.
And I've seen cars idling, and they do idle for a long time. It's not that they're in and take, you get one car in and it could be there 10 minutes basically. Because I know, especially later on at night when they don't have the stuff ready, and I know there's a big government push for air quality. I can't understand the air quality for the town centre, but you're pushing. Is it not worth looking into that? We deserve air quality in residential areas as well. And I can't see having a drive-through next to a residential area, that it would affect air quality there as well. So
so obviously we were arguing about the impact that would have on traffic. Air quality probably wasn't such a hot topic back in 2014, but it absolutely is now. And my advice, I guess, would be to pick 2 or 3 maybe key areas to really focus on.
And the issue of air quality is absolutely central to that. We have real problems of air quality around pockets of our area as well. So that was a good point to make. But what we've already decided to do, and we've done, is we've lodged an objection with the planning application in relation to how it's going to be handled. So at the moment it's recommended that it be handled by council officers. We've said we think it's such an important issue, it needs to be escalated to the level of the whole planning committee, which will make a decision in public, rather than delegated to officers who will make a decision in private. We're not taking a position on Burger King or not as a brand. Really, it's the nature of the business that's proposed there, and the location is a key thing for us. So we'll pursue that. We live in a terrific part of Newcastle, in this part of the West End. There are loads of really good things going for us. So varieties of housing types, varieties of shops. Some people have upgraded their shops, so they look really quite attractive. Got some good primary school facilities and some good health facilities, usually close at hand. The transport links into the city centre, all of that. And above all, within everything else, we've got a huge amount of community pride and solidarity and enthusiasm. I mean, clearly over here, in terms of the reopening of Elswick, there was a huge community effort that had to be mounted over years and produced a terrific achievement of reopening the pool. But beyond this planning application, I think we need, given people have been aroused by really what's been happening over this, there's something else we could do if we hang together. And the fact you've formed a West End Residents Association over here, but Green Wingrove over the other side, and various other groups, means we could perhaps, when this has been dealt with, just sit down and think, well, where do we go next in all of this? How do we make this a much more attractive place to live in?
Hi everyone. Along with that, we're two of the trustees for Elswick Pool and have been involved with a campaign to reopen it. So public health is a really big thing for everybody. This is an area with, as mentioned, great levels of deprivation, obesity, childhood obesity. So having a fast food establishment, another one on West Road, is really not ideal. And when you add the environmental factors in as well, air pollution's been mentioned. I mean, there was a report in the Chronicle in 2015 saying that in West Road, the air quality pollution breaches national guidelines already, and that was a few years ago. So adding to that problem, it is really bad. We need some up-to-date information. Newcastle University has an urban observatory and they have air quality information, so I will get in contact with them to see if we can get up-to-date information. We can use that as evidence. Burger King's target audience isn't really local people, it's bringing in people from outside the area who will be polluting it with their vehicles, not us. We're not going to be reaping the benefits of that. And going back to what Nigel was saying in terms of having lots of takeaways along here, yeah, we've already got a great variety and most of them are independent. And while I'm not against Burger King or any other chain, the fact that we've got independent local businesses who are, people are spending their money there and those businesses are putting their money back into it rather than a multinational's pockets, essentially. Again, local people aren't going to be reaping the rewards of having a drive-through Burger King. So I have a long history of campaigning along with Anne, so you've got two people on your side and we'll do what we can to help. Not from a political basis, just because this is our local area and we love it, and it's really important that we do what's right for this area. So thank you.
Thank you.
So last night, in addition to the residents that have contacted us directly, last night I logged on to the council's planning portal and spent many hours not actually reading the planning documents. I really wanted to read all of the objections and views for the development. And the clear message that I really got from that is hearing for the council to reject the proposal because it's not the right thing for our area. We don't need another takeaway on the West Road, with one resident quite powerfully describing locating another drive-through here as destructive and cynical. Although this isn't a planning consideration, this doesn't obviously fit with Newcastle Council's recent declaration of climate emergency, carbon neutral goals, and plans to reduce air pollution and car use in the city. And as we all know, especially those of us that do regular litter picks, littering is already a serious issue in the West End, and many residents are deeply distressed by litter and vermin on an ongoing basis. So there's a real fear and risk that the drive-through will make this problem much worse. Those in favour of the development, which I should also mention from our ward, have talked about jobs. But I've noticed that some others have countered that argument by saying that, yes, of course jobs are important, but could we have a better, more thoughtful development which would also create jobs? So this isn't anti-jobs. So as well as opposing this development, I think a few people have alluded to the future, so I think this would be really exciting if this could present an opportunity in how we can talk about what the building could be, what would really serve the local community and what that would look like. I guess I'm interested in a development that would keep wealth in the local community and that values the power of human capital and promotes economic and environmental sustainability. And one resident's comment that I read last night just sums this up perfectly. It was a brilliant comment. I don't know if anybody here made it, but I'm quoting, "This building was a police station serving the community. The building should remain in service of the community."
There are 3 councillors also in West Fenham. Now West Fenham's a bit further along. We kind of start just by the college and back down the hill. So we're not directly affected, and we haven't really had a lot of contact from residents in West Fenham as yet. But so I'm kind of here to keep an eye to see if anybody mentions West Fenham.
Hi everyone, my name's Naeem Ghani, and I actually live right opposite the proposed site. So there's a few people here from Linwood Avenue, and really our houses back the proposed site, and I think some of our boundaries or gardens are actually about 6 metres away from the actual Burger King itself. I've walked down the back lanes of along the West Road. I mean, somebody mentioned Cannon Street, and I was in and this was during the day at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I must have just seen about 20 rats scurrying down the back lane. And we've got bins there, people use bins, and some of these rats were as big as cats. I've never seen anything like it. And really what I'm trying to do is avoid that in my back lane. Bearing in mind, it's only 6 metres away from our garden where my children play.
It's not just like a conversion, like somebody doing the flat out or putting an extension to the house. This is a major development, and I can't see why it was just going to be handed to the planners to do it. It should have come to committee from day one.
We have to use each stage, and that's why this meeting is so important, that we have had this meeting, and maybe, and I'm sorry the applicant representative don't want to speak, because there's a chance to actually look at this one as well, and to say from applicants, maybe they would think again about it. So there's all sorts of processes that can happen on this, but that's the process. It might irritate me enormously, but it is.
There appear to be many more objectors than supporters, with a willingness to escalate the opposition. The community calls McDonald to abandon its schoolside drive-through at Kenton. Elswick and Benwell residents want to do the same.